Nothing But the Truth. Hello, I'm Raj Chengappa and your host for Nothing But the Truth. Every week, we will deal with key issues of concern and bring you perspectives and clarity as to why these matter to you and the one clear truth that emerges. On Diwali Day, Rishi Sunak made history when his party endorsed his leadership to become Britain's first non-white and British Asian Prime Minister. At 42, he is also Britain's youngest Prime Minister in over 200 years, and his coming is seen as the Obama moment. Barack Obama, if you recall, broke all racial barriers when he was the first person of color to become President of the United States in 2009 at the age of 48. Sunak is a Star Wars fan. He's a committed Southampton Football Club supporter, a vegetarian, a teetotaler, and a practising Hindu. Sunak, though, takes over at a tough time when the British economy is in a shambles. It has the highest inflation rate in 4 decades of above 10%. The pound has plummeted dangerously when compared to the dollar, and in September, it dipped to its lowest level ever. Food prices have spiraled upwards at their fastest pace in more than 40 years. A cost of living crisis has hit all parts of the country as wages have remained low. Worse, consumer spending has nosedived, with data released recently showing that people were buying even less than they did before the pandemic struck. Interest rates were climbing up, sparking angry reactions across Britain's famed investment bankers and businessmen. So in retrospect, for Sunak, winning the prime ministership may be much easier than actually rescuing Britain from the morass it has sunk into. In this episode, we will analyze some of the major challenges and pitfalls that Sunak faces, and as importantly, being the first British Prime Minister of Indian origin, would it make a big difference to India's relations with Britain? Would he favour India? But let's begin though by looking at how Rishi Sunak got to the top so rapidly. His rise is without doubt a phenomenal story of success. Sunak is of Punjabi descent, and he was born in 1980 in Southampton in the UK to Yashveer and Usha Sunak. Yashveer was a National Health Service doctor and Usha a pharmacist, respectively. They were both born in East Africa and migrated to the UK in the 60s. Yashveer and Usha met in the UK and married in 1977. His doctor father and pharmacist mother sent him to an elite private school called the Winchester College. Sunak's biggest regret is that he never won a scholarship to Winchester, and his parents had to fork out a princely sum of £43,000 annually as fees. Sunak then joined Lincoln College at Oxford University as an undergraduate to study philosophy, politics, and economics. After he graduated in 2001, he joined Goldman Sachs, a top investment banking and consultancy firm. He then completed an MBA degree from Stanford University and returned to London in 2006. He joined 2 prominent hedge fund groups and did well there, ensuring that his personal wealth grew. It was at Stanford that Sunak met his wife Akshata Murthy, daughter of Indian IT czar N.R. Narayan Murthy. The two were married in 2009 and have 2 daughters now. Sunak soon immersed himself in politics and joined the Conservative Party. In May 2015, he won the Richmond seat with more than 50% of the votes. He took his oath, interestingly, on the Bhagavad Gita after being elected MP. Sunak then backed the Brexit movement that essentially campaigned for Britain to move out of the European Union and form trade relations independently of it. More importantly, he backed Boris Johnson, who was then among the most fervent Brexiters. That decision would pay off subsequently for Sunak. Boris Johnson then went on to become Prime Minister in July 2019 after deposing Theresa May. Then Johnson ensured that the Tories, or the Conservative Party, would return to power with a landslide victory in December that year itself. And by January 2020, Britain finally moved out of the EU. As Prime Minister, Johnson initially picked Sunak to be Chief Secretary of the Treasury and then made him Chancellor of the Exchequer. This is equivalent to the Union Finance Minister in India. When COVID struck soon after, more than Johnson, Sunak became the man of the moment. His profile soared when he evolved generous cash schemes to help the needy and unemployed. And this saw him being acknowledged as a compassionate leader even as he took tough decisions to steady the tottering economy. Then Sunak struck at the right time by resigning from his position as Chancellor in July when he found that Johnson's reign had turned shambolic. His resignation set off a cascade of ministerial departures that culminated in Johnson's ouster. Sunak threw his hat in the ring for the Prime Minister's post and was challenged by former Foreign Secretary Liz Truss. They both outlined their plans to tackle the flailing economy. Truss argued for a trickle-down strategy pinned on tax cuts, particularly for the wealthiest, while Sunak, who was fiscally conservative, pushed for tough means to rein in inflation. Truss went on to win the party leader's vote, but her disastrous economic plan came unstuck soon after, sending the British economy to the brink of collapse. That's when Truss was ousted and Sunak voted to power by the Conservative Party. Though losing the leadership race to Truss was a setback, it may have been a blessing in disguise. It gives Sunak more leeway and time to go about pulling the economy out of the terrible mess that it is right now in. Sunak will have to deal with not just an economy in a shambles, but also a Tory party that is hopelessly split into groups and a resurgent Labour Party that is demanding fresh general elections rather than wait till 2024 when it is due. As Sunak told his partymen after being elected, it is a do or die moment for us. So then what are the challenges and the pitfalls that Sunak faces, and what does he need to do? Rishi Sunak, in his first speech to his party, said that unity and stability would be his key goals as Prime Minister. The Conservative Party, as I mentioned, is badly split into groups, and a resurgent Labour Party is waiting in the wings. As leader of the Conservative Party, Sunak's main task is that he leads his party into the next elections, which is just 2 years away, as I mentioned, in a better position than what it is now. Now, for the Labour Party, Sunak is a far more difficult opponent than any other of the Tory candidates. And that's because, given his charisma, his rare confidence, and a can-do approach, in addition, he is relatively young and has extremely good looks. In fact, the tabloid papers in Britain have called him Dishy Rishi. The second big task for Sunak is ensuring the unity of the country with the 4 regions of the UK, England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland having differing demands and problems that they face. Simultaneously, Sunak has to work to forge unity among the people of UK who are divided on key issues as never before. So it is clear that Sunak will be hard focused on sorting out the key domestic issues, with the economy being the top priority. This includes low economic growth, spiraling inflation, surging prices, labor shortage, mounting debt, and a cost of living crisis that needs to be capped, or at least to control the cost of household energy. Sunak has promised tough economic measures, which he says he will announce soon, but has assured the people that he would adopt a compassionate approach. Like Margaret Thatcher, Sunak has to resort to tough, unconventional economic measures to deal with a collapsing economy and public confidence. His main tasks are to control inflation and that would ensure him support from the electorate. And for reviving the economy, he needs to attract private investments, and for that he would have to steady the pound and lower interest rates. Economist Nitin Desai told me that this will require Sunak to take tough decisions, including spending cuts, particularly in the sensitive area of defense budgets, and if he doesn't want to impose taxes, he would have to devise other austerity measures. He also has to find ways to restore trade relations with Europe if Britain's economy is to regain its former might. What Sunak does for the economy in the next month will make or break his premiership, if not the UK. The other challenge for Sunak is to move beyond his privileged upper class background and address the cost of living crisis in the country that I talked of earlier. Sunak's immense wealth works against him and has earned for him the derisive title of Rishi Rich. He, his wife, and daughters live in mostly their 5-bedroom house in West London worth around £7 million. On weekends, the family retreats to a posh Georgian manor house in his Richmond constituency in North Yorkshire. It is estimated that Sunak and his wife Akshata's personal wealth jointly is around $830 million. Sunak has been attacked for flaunting of his wealth, especially at a time when millions of Britons face unemployment and fuel shortages. His wife too faces criticism on her wealth and the way she's handled it, but Sunak defends both of them, saying values are what are more important and not what we own. So what about relations with India? Will Sunak favour his country of origin, or would he turn out to be more loyal than the king? While there is a lot of euphoria in India over his appointment, experts believe that Sunak may be tougher on India. His reappointment of Suella Braverman as Home Minister signals a rough road for the ongoing negotiations for a free trade agreement with India. When Truss was Prime Minister, Braverman, as a Home Secretary, had said she had concerns about the great trade deal because it would increase migration to the UK, and then went on to say a no-no, saying that Indians represented the largest group of visa overstayers. India had in fact been calling for the free movement of people to accompany the free trade movement of goods, and her comments provoked angry reactions from New Delhi. What Braverman said is not good news for the progress of the migration and mobility agreement that was signed between India and the UK in May 2021 when Boris Johnson was Prime Minister. Gayatri Isar Kumar, who was still recently India's High Commissioner of the UK, told me that the arrangement had taken a very balanced approach to the twin issues that have impacted India-UK ties over the years. The first is facilitating legitimate movement of nationals between our countries to boost trade and foster closer cooperation in education and other services. The second is cooperation on the return of Indian nationals found to be illegally resident in the UK or those who have overstayed their visas. The first step of this entire agreement, which was establishing a joint working group to work out the modalities of implementing it, has so far, unfortunately, been patchy in its execution. Gayatri Issa Kumar believes that continuity should be Sunak's guiding principles while dealing with India, particularly while working towards the objectives jointly identified by India and the UK in the roadmap to 2030. Launched in May 2021, when Johnson was Prime Minister, it is in fact the first such 10-year commitment made by the UK to any foreign government. The initiatives and cooperations covered in this document range from space and science, advanced technology and education to healthcare, trade, defense, security, apart from culture, sustainable development, and beyond that. Sunak had also supported the goal of doubling India-UK trade by 2030. Currently it is around $30 billion, and has asked for the early conclusion of a free trade agreement. Interestingly, among those that Sunak spoke to soon after taking over as Prime Minister was a conversation with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and they both agreed to push through the free trade agreement at the earliest. So Sunak has a tough task ahead of him. We have talked of his economic problems, we have talked with relations with India and how he would deal with it, but it is without doubt that his appointment as Prime Minister is historic. Let's not forget that in 1947, a half-naked fakir, as Winston Churchill disparagingly called Mahatma Gandhi, brought the mighty British Empire down to its knees and forced it to grant India its independence. Now, 75 years later, a person of Indian ancestry is seeking to free Britain from its economic despair and gloom. Whatever Sunak does will have wide-ranging consequences for people at home and abroad. For more on Sunak and his challenges, do read India Today magazine that has done an extensive cover story on the new British Prime Minister. Thank you for listening to this episode of Nothing But the Truth. I look forward to having you with me the next time. Nothing but the truth.